My name is Irina, and I'm here with David Engelstad. And David is going to talk to us about unions. David is an IT specialist. He is a local Wisconsinite and also a union member. David, thank you for being here and talking to us and educating us a little bit.
My pleasure.
Can you talk to your experience of what it's like to be a union member?
My experience is positive. When I first came into the company I worked for over 20 years ago, didn't know it was a union shop, didn't know what that meant. So for the first few years, I just did my job. So, the union can be very much kind of background. It doesn't have to be in your face. But as I learned about what the union did, and we had a contract negotiation not long after I started seeing some of the benefits almost right away. At the time I started, this was the later 90s, all the tech increases, and we got a range adjustment almost right away, and that was an 18% wage increase.
Wow, 18% wage increase?
Yep. Just because the market had changed such, and they wanted to make sure that we were there, and the company negotiated with the union, and that's what they came up with. So, at that point I thought, hey, maybe there's something to this union thing.
So is a wage increase something that you see regularly with your union membership?
For 21 years, I cannot remember a single year when I did not get a raise.
Even during the recession?
Even during the recession.
That's incredible.
Yeah, in 2008,
Wow.
the troubled times in early 2000, every year it's in the contract, and it's been negotiated. And so that's one of the things that's a benefit of being in a union. We have a contract. Most people that aren't union are what are called at-will employees. That means they can walk out anytime they want, but it also means that if the boss has a bad day, they can fire them at any time.
Oh, ouch.
Whereas with a union contract, it's spelled out. How do we get rid of somebody? And in our contract, you have to have what's called cause, just cause. And there's steps so that the employee, oops, I've been messing up, I need to straighten up and fly right. They can correct their behavior, and it's not at the whims of management. It's spelled out, which makes sense then for both sides. Management knows what has to happen, and so does the employee.
It seems like it takes the stress out of the relationship, because if the employee knows, okay, I have like 3 infractions or something before I have to face the situation, and the employer knows exactly what to do, that seems like it eliminates the stress.
I think so. Everyone knows how the game is played. We've got a rule book, and that just makes it easier. One of the misconceptions about unions is, oh, well, they just make it easy for lazy workers or any of those kind of... Not that long ago, we had someone who was sleeping on the job.
Was it me? No.
It was not you.
I don't work with him. So.
And they were fired. That was for cause. And the union said, you're right, they need to go.
Yeah.
It's not just, oh, we're doing everything we can to support bad workers. Another misconception is that there is an opposition, that somehow unions are opposed to companies. It's not true. Our union wants our company to succeed.
Well, as a worker, you want your company to succeed as well, correct?
Absolutely.
It wouldn't make sense if your company wasn't successful.
Absolutely. I like working there. I want to continue working there. And I want to make sure that our union is pulling in the same direction. Having that rule book, the contract, makes that easier to do. And yes, I can see things that are important to me that I think would make things better for me as an employee, and we'll bring that forward. Company may have different ideas. Oh, I want this much of a raise, we want this much of a raise. That's called negotiation. And you come in with facts and figures, and this is the sense of what we need to be the best employees we can, and management comes with theirs, and you negotiate. That's where the contract comes from. It is absolutely true that we want the company to succeed.
So, in those negotiations, do the interests of the smaller groups become taken up to be talked about, or?
Absolutely. I mean, within our bargaining unit, which is a specific company, there are different areas, work units,
Okay.
and so they're represented often. Each work unit has a steward. So that's what one of the things that a steward does. They are elected from those who are working in that particular area. Often they come forward because they're people who they've got something to say. You know, they bring issues to people who are already part of the union or part of the stewards and say, hey, what about this? And we say, that's great. How would you like to be a steward?
So that was my question. How are stewards, chosen? It's just people who are very active that.
Yeah, by people who show up.
Okay.
And, they can then be voted on. So if there are more than one person who's running for a particular area, there's a vote, and the one with the most vote gets it. Unions are one of the best small d democratic organizations that we have. We vote on all the contracts. We vote on the stewards. There's an executive board that are people that it's where the stewards help run and make sure that the contract is adhered to for a company. The executive board is overseeing all of the union operations. Those people are elected.
So those are employees that become elected to the executive board.
Right, from the different bargaining units. So the different companies that are all represented by our local, not every bargaining unit has someone on the executive board, but we make sure that there's as wide a cross section as possible. They are elected. So when people say, "Oh, the union did this," when employees say the union did this, they got to remember they're the union, and if they are unhappy with the direction things are going, there's ways of dealing with that. Become part of the executive board. Become one of the stewards, be on the negotiating team. So when a contract comes up, it's not just the stewards. If you have experience with negotiating contracts, if you just have a really important issue you want to bring forward, you can be part of the negotiating team. We are the union, and so it succeeds when we do.
Well, that's interesting. And you've been really involved in the union in your workplace for many years.
Mm-hmm.
And you're seeing benefits as far as, wage increases and, vacation or other.
Oh, absolutely. And all of those things are negotiated. So, and laid out. So again, there's no surprise. I know how much vacation I get. And, between year 5 and year 10, where that changes. I know that if the company needs to downsize for any reason, I know that I will get severance pay. All of that is within the contract as well.
Do you feel that because you are a union member, you are given greater transparency as to what your company is doing?
No. No. I mean, it's interesting because we've got a number of different bargaining units, and the companies that are represented there all act differently. There are some of them that, as soon as they are deciding on a business strategy that's going to affect one of the bargaining units, they inform our union. They say, this is what's going on. We want to make sure that it's as minimal impact as possible, or however. They're very upfront. They're very transparent. We have other companies that do their best to ignore the fact that they have a union at their company, and they make changes and they implement changes that all of a sudden affect the workers, and that's when the union has to get involved and say, wait a minute, we have a contract, and that's not in accordance with the contract.
Well, that's very curious, because so what you're saying is that some people may not even know that their workplace is a union shop.
It's possible, especially now that Wisconsin is a right-to-work state.
Can you talk a little bit about what that means, right-to-work state?
Right-to-work is the best marketing ploy that anyone has come up with since cigarettes are good for you. It sounds like a good thing. Well, I want the right to work, and really it's the right to work for less.
Oh.
Because what it does is it undercuts unions. It used to be that unions were what were called closed shops. You went to work for a company, it had a union, you were part of the union. That's all there was to it. And that's how it was when I first joined. So I was told I was part of a union. I was told this is what my dues were. And they came out of my check. I didn't have to worry about it. And okay, whatever. Then when it became more obvious that there were issues with the contracts, then I started seeing what the union does. Now with right to work, and I have no idea how this works from a contract standpoint because it makes no sense to me. What it means is that any bargaining unit, a new person coming in can choose not to join. They are, however, covered by the contract. They're covered by the working agreement, and if they have an issue with management, they can force the union to represent them.
So what you're saying is this person coming in can say, I don't want to pay my union dues, but I still can use the union representation.
Exactly.
And reap all the benefits.
Reap all the benefits and let the union incur all of that cost and not pay their fair share.
Not to sound like a, school kid, but how is that fair?
It isn't fair. I'm not sure how it's legal, but the Supreme Court says it is. But people who look at it short term, I'd rather keep the $30 a paycheck or whatever it is, in my wallet this pay period. They think that's more important than supporting the union going forward. And that's by design. I mean, that's what right to work is for. That's why they put those provisions in there, is because those who champion right to work legislation don't want unions to succeed. They want to have all of the power in the hands of, as I say, those who sign the front of the check, as opposed to those who sign the back of the check. And unions are just a way of trying to balance that out. There are those who don't want that balance.
I see. So really it's important for people to become aware that in order for them to have better work conditions, they really should be paying their union dues.
They should be paying their union dues. And one of the arguments is, because we're a union because that's where we choose to work. So not everyone is on the liberal end of the spectrum. They work there, and that's where they work, and they're paying into the union. Well, unions tend to support more liberal political parties, more liberal legislation. They may not like that. Well, there's always been a provision where you can say, I don't want to participate in that part, and then they pay a smaller percentage.
I see.
That supports the union's activities of negotiation.
But just not that part.
But not the other part that goes to other causes.
Okay.
And so to say that, right to work, we need to give people the ability to opt out entirely, because otherwise First Amendment, they've always had that ability to not pay for that part, but then they were still required to pay for the fact that the union is there negotiating on their behalf.
So what you're saying is that unions are inherently political because they work towards rights of the worker. However, as a union member, you would not have to pay for the politics.
Right.
You can opt out.
Yeah, I find it curious that supporting workers is a political thing. Most of us are workers to some degree or another. It should just be that, we want things to work out well for those who do the work. But yes, in our environment, it is inherently a political thing, that there is one major party that tends to support CEOs and corporations, and there's one that tends to support those who work for a living. And because then that's the environment we are in, unions tend to support that party that tries to do things that in the interest of workers. That becomes political.